Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Sureshnie and welcome to another edition of hashtag Study Sesh, brought to you, of course, by Boston Broadcasts. So excited to be here with you today. I'm obviously not alone. Please welcome my guest, Claire. Claire, how are you doing? Claire Jackson Bernardo.
So good to be here and so good to see your friendly face again.
Oh, Claire, when I saw today's topic that we're going to unlock, I was like, hold on, you and I are an absolute synergy. And let me just give you a quick background. Claire and I have known each other for well over 25 years, that's right? Because obviously with me being on 5FM and Claire obviously working with the media industry, specifically with Ster-Kinekor, we used to work together. And precisely what we're going to unpack today is an example of our relationship. Purely symbiotic. We've had a synergy, we've got to work with each other, and I think it proves how we have developed a relationship between public relations and media perfectly well. So I'm so excited that you and I get to catch up today on Study Sesh.
I'm looking forward to it too. It's a bit of a flashback, but it'll be a fun flashback.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect flashback because, Claire, I know you're a senior public relations lecturer now with Boston for 15 years, but before that, you had your own company called Alerting the Media for 20 years. And just precisely what you did is what we're actually going to unpack today. And I think you and I have a real life example of how we have worked together to develop this perfect PR pitch to receive the coverage. Because Claire, obviously coming from the media industry and with myself, or just with our teams in radio working, we both needed to work with each other in order to get content across. She has something that's important. She's got this important nugget. And us as the presenter, producer, we're looking for content. And the moment you meet and you align, we're like, hold on, Claire, when it comes to movies or when it comes to getting interviews, or hey, we've got an artist in town, Claire picks up the phone, pops us an email, says, guys, would you be interested in X, Y, and Z? And that's kind of how this whole symbiotic relationship comes about, right?
It is. And, a lot of times people talk about the fact that there's so many PR people out there and there's so many people pitching and talking, but it really is about building a relationship. So it's not just this void of people and this void of emails that is going out. You've built a relationship with someone, you've got to know them, you understand their shows, you understand what they do, and then you are able to pick up the phone and say, listen, I heard you talking about something, let's follow on from that. Or, so you're a big fan, but it's part of the research. But you're a fan because it's relevant to your client, or it's relevant to your target market. So that's the symbiosis of it, is I need you, you need me, but it's needing each other in a positive way. It's not using each other or anything like that.
Absolutely. So Claire, I have a background in journalism, and I remember when I was studying journalism, the public relations department and the journalism department were very much side by side. And our lecturers would say to us, this is very beneficial. Learn about what each of you do, because when it comes to writing press releases, you're going to be depending on each other, and you both need each other in order to get your message out. And I think that's exactly what's happened in this world. And if we were to start already, it's very strategic. And just like you've just said, we both do need each other at the end of the day. And it's about recognizing, hey, I get that. How do I get that artist on air? If you listen to your favorite radio show, right? Let's say it's Anele in the club and you love what they're doing. And then suddenly Anele she's talking about something, and the next 5 minutes, the brand manager's on the line. How do you think that's happened? That's happened over years of building really good relationships with the producers, but also people knowing the market, understanding the target market. So if she is talking about R&B music and you are the PR person or the record company that works with R&B music, boom, you need to make that little contact. So I think that's where we start, is knowing your target, research and targeting. Let's start there. Tell me a bit about research and targeting from a PR perspective.
Listen, we do research. We're not even aware that we're doing it, but research is a fundamental part of everything that we do. What should we do on the weekend? You do research. What do you feel like for supper? You go on to Mr. D and you do research. So we're doing research all the time. It's just got this big word to it. And unfortunately, when you're a student, research sounds like kill me now, hard work, right? It does. It's not, it doesn't have, the word research needs a PR campaign behind it to get it to, some good vibes going. But, that's the key, is that if you're going for a job interview, if you are putting a marketing campaign together, if you are putting a PR campaign together, if you don't do research, then you don't understand your target market. And so it's more than just your target market, because obviously you have to know who you're pitching to, but you want to know about the sector, the business sector. You want to know who the competitors are. You want to know what journalists have been talking about before, because there's nothing more embarrassing than pitching to someone and they say, well, didn't you listen last week? We were talking about this last week. So research really makes you a person that can walk into the room, walk into a pitch, walk into an email with background and knowledge and talkability. The more effort and time and energy I put into research, actually the less work I have to do, because you put in all this energy, you get all this information, and as you're doing the research, the synapses are just going mad, because you're doing it and going, there's an idea, there's a pitch. And so for me, the more research I do at the beginning, the less work I have to do further down the line in the campaign.
Absolutely. And I think an important part of that is knowing the story and knowing your story. For example, you have to refresh your angles all the time. So story goes out on air. Our journalists have already covered it. Now you need the public relations and you need this particular story to come back. So what do you come with? You have to come with a fresh angle, fresh perspective, and make it something with a USP, a unique selling point that makes you stand out. How do you get knowing your story to the other side?
Well, it really is that research element, and it's staying up to date with trends, and it's listening, and it's your unique selling point is also what was unique today is not unique tomorrow.
Okay.
The day something happens, the day there's a breaking news article angle, the day somebody dies, the day someone has a baby, the day the rand dollar exchange goes up or down, the story changes. And so your unique selling point, you have to also consider. And this just takes me back a little bit to the Boston diploma that I love so much, is because you've studied marketing, advertising, radio, journalism, graphic design, you know exactly how to pitch to a television producer and what they're looking for. And so you know what their unique selling point needs to be, because you know who they are. You know radio producers, you know what it's like to put a radio show together, how interesting someone has to be to talk to. And so if you've got someone that's interesting versus someone that literally could put you to sleep, you know that. You know all these elements. So when you are putting a pitch together, when you're putting an idea together, you understand the back end. You understand that someone needs cutaway footage when they do a shoot.
Yeah.
When you invite them to an exclusive interview, what are they going to cut away to? They can't just have two boring heads. Cue editor now to cut away to cool footage of somebody doing something fun.
Yeah.
That's what you know, because you've done it. And that's what helps you. Sometimes people think you're studying advertising, or you're studying marketing, or you're studying PR. You're not. You're studying media.
Yeah.
And it's all encompassing. We all work together. And so your understanding then helps you put that unique selling point together based on that media outlet that you've chosen.
Absolutely. One of the things I think I love the most is when I was working, doing everything, you're wanting to do, you're on air, you're producing behind the scenes, you're doing voiceovers. The word is omnipresent. To be omnipresent, to be aware and self-aware of all the things that are going on around you. You've just talked about graphic design, TV producing, journalism. You're right, there's so many of these elements, but once you take a moment to focus, they actually all work together. We spoke about synchronicity, we talk about symbiotic relationships. They actually do. When you spoke about, you've just covered research and targeting and knowing your story. Jimmy Fallon is a great example of, you watch his shows and go, how did he figure out that Dakota Johnson is actually quite a comedian and she's able to slip into a character named Bubbles? How did you know that? How would you know that Ariana Grande has this unbelievable, insane talent of doing musical impressions? And how is it that when he says, do me Celine Dion, and then suddenly she's like doing a Celine Dion track, or hey, do a Mariah? Like, how would they do it? Because of the intense research that they do before they do the show, and the fact that before they phone up Ariana to be a guest, they need to get something that makes her stand out. They need to okay, what is it? Because Ariana's been interviewed a billion times all over the world, different presenters and different journalists, but They need something unique and special to match Jimmy Fallon's style. There's got to be a hook, which brings you to this. What is it that we need to get people excited, to pull me in, and I want to be on that show?
Well, first of all, you've got to ask yourself, is this interesting to me? You know, is it something that people will find interesting, but does it connect with them? And it goes back to that whole research. If you've connected, you know who your audience is, you are then so much more able to go, hang on a second, this is a young audience. So me talking about you know, a more mature artist or pitching a movie that's an art movie to a young audience, unless there's a particular hook, unless there's a particular something, they're not going to be interested. So you're a trend watcher in order to be a trend setter, because obviously you want to set that trend or that discussion or get that topic going. So you have to watch what the trends are in order to see how you can shape them, or how you can jump on a trend or even divert a trend and go, hang on a second, let's go left of this. Let's pitch an opposite idea to what everybody's talking about.
Absolutely. Like when you talk about that, I think about how deep the personalization becomes in order to get more effective media or advertising out of something. A simple example again, and I go back to radio because that's my comfortable place and I know it really well. If we look at the character maps, we look at radio as each individual show has a character map. So on the show, for example, let's take Anele and the club. We know that Anele is the head of the club and she's the captain. She's steering the conversation and she's extremely funny, very witty. Anele is also superbly passionate at what she does, and she's like a consummate professional, but she's also, just like me, one crazy fan when it comes to Beyonce, the way I am to Mariah. So if you, for example, as a PR person, know you have to promote Beyonce's brand new album, Beyonce's got a brand new perfume line or something, you're not going to take it to talk radio with somebody who is disconnected to the brand. And you know that target or that conversation would be far more engaging if you went to a presenter like Anele, because A, she knows the artist really well. She's probably going to do so much research that she brings in nuggets and nuggets of information. So that is actually something that's pretty vital. So I think having her on board would be far better. And I think when you create that personalization, that's your next step, right?
Well, also, and just to throw a spanner in the works, because this is how you have to constantly keep up and you constantly have to talk. Conversely, you could say, we know that Anele is a big fan. She's going to be talking about this whether we mention it or not. So let's find another angle on Beyonce. Let's talk about the music business. Let's talk about the relevance of how to stay relevant. She's just launched a country and western song.
Yes.
That's so you could actually go to a presenter on a radio show that loves country music, and you could do this transition. So the personalization also becomes the fact that you can also see that multiple angles lie in multiple places. And so you don't always have to go to the obvious. And if you know that, let's just say you were to pitch to a more business show, a business angle, the business of music, someone's father is listening and might go, this is the perfect gift to buy tickets or to get this album for my child. And it's so thinking outside of the obvious sometimes that makes the conversation more interesting as well.
I mean, a perfect example would be Taylor versus the other Kansas chief wife who came up with the idea of the Kansas City jacket. She saw a marketing opportunity with Taylor Swift. Whatever Taylor Swift touches is gold. She's got the Midas touch. From the little show bracelets, kids now making a whole bunch of bracelets. There's a business opportunity there. In real life, if we look at real time, one of the biggest challenges we have is time itself. It's this instant gratification that we're living in. We want the information now. We need it snackable. We need it quick. I remember one of the first things I learned in journalism is the 5 W's and an H. What is happening, where it happened, who it happened, why it happened, how it happened. That was your lead story. So people are sitting in traffic, reading a newspaper, they open it up. They can't open the whole newspaper because they're in traffic and they're driving a car. But if they opened a newspaper and they could fold it up a little bit and while on their steering wheel quickly see, quick little lead, oh, I got the gist of the story. How important is that when it comes to clear and concise messaging?
Listen, and this is what we teach in PR. The who, what, where, when, how, and why needs to be in the first two paragraphs because you've got to hook a journalist And the journalist has to read that media release or that media motivation and see, this is who it's targeting, this is the cost, this is the price, all of that kind of thing. But also, you don't want a journalist to have to hit reply and ask you a question that you could have included, and then that journalist you might take an hour to get back to them, and then another story might have come along. So it's so important to keep on that and to keep the who, what, where, when, how, and why. But also to understand that many people have different who's and what's and where's. And so by breaking down your target market and really looking at it, you're able to see what is relevant to a specific target market. So if we go back to the Taylor Swift angle, what I love is how there are so many dads that took their daughters to Taylor Swift,
Yes.
and who are Swifties and who know all the words. Now, I would love to have a chat to the dads, and to me, it goes to being a good father and a present father, and things to do with your child and bonding experiences, how to empower young women. Taylor Swift is an empowered young woman, and if you were a father, you'd want your daughter to have a role model like that. So if you understand your specific target market and the who and the what that is relevant to them, you're then able to come up with something.
The other thing I love is what people stand for, their value proposition. And I think value is so important. How do you approach providing value?
I think your first value proposition, especially in today's day and age where everything is so snackable, where everything is, we used to say you've got 7 seconds to make an impression. Now you've got 2 seconds to make an impression. Yeah. And unfortunately, there have been a lot of PR has got a little bit of a bad rap over the last couple of years with political campaigns. There's been a lot of things where people have been unethical, where people have behaved in a not ethical light. And so for me, that thing that I hold dear and that I hold the most valuable is that people know that I'm ethical, and people know that I'm honest and that I'm trustworthy, and that if you give me your brand, I will do everything for it in an honest and ethical way. Unfortunately, we live in a day and a time where people want that instant gratification that comes with instant fame. And that means a lot of people are quick to lie. They're quick to come up with something. They're quick to bolster their value and show they're more valuable. Whereas if they had just been honest up front, they would have been a lot better off. Yeah. And so that trust is so important, and your own ethics and morals, and moments where sometimes you have to walk away and say, this is not going to work, or I'm not comfortable pushing this to make it work, because the consumer is wide awake.
Yeah. And people can read the room, and people are very quick to be able to go, that's not who you are. You're not being authentic. You're saying something here, but you're actually performing like this. Where do you stand? I know this from a personal point of view, because as somebody who was in the media industry, even as a content creator, simple example, I do not drink alcohol. I do not consume pork. So those are things people know about who I am. I love tea. And if I suddenly, and I was offered this many times, where an alcoholic brand like, hey, Sush, would you like to promote? I mean, it's really fun. And I said, first of all, I don't drink your product, so I don't know your product. And I don't want to go on national radio. I don't want to go onto any of my platforms and say, try this, it's delicious, and then fake it. Because first of all, it's something that's not within my ethics. It's not something that I want to do. And I've always turned down things like smoking and anything to do with alcohol, because it doesn't align with me. And I feel that I've always wanted to be authentic in what I do in my content creation, and people will call me out. I do not want to be that person that says, you know what, I needed the money and this is happening right now and it's trendy. You can choose not to jump on a trend. And I think it'll go further for your brand if you do that, because it's just about quality versus quantity. People are going to come at you with a ton of things. Oh, you should do this. Oh, you should wear my dress. Or you should drink my drink, or be seen at my nightclub. If you do not live that life and you do not match up, the brand will actually suffer. Imagine if I said to a brand, I will take your money and I will happily promote your drink, and then I'm actually not even tasting this drink. It just wouldn't be right, especially for someone like myself. So I think that's really important.
We leave a digital footprint.
Yes.
And so
yes.
the negativity for your brand, if someone were to pull up a post from 20 years ago, or to pull up something and say, hang on a second, you were so anti this at this stage, and now all of a sudden you're not. And then they put the then and the now together, that becomes the story. And so from a public relations point of view, that is why we are so, the brands that we work for, the brands that we represent, why we do such an audit socially, personally, all of that, because Twitter or ex detectives are brilliant. They literally, they could find out who shot JFK if they put their mind to it.
Yeah.
And you just you never want to be in that situation ever.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's important when you talk about a digital footprint. Part of the digital footprint is to leave a lasting impression. And I'd like to think that that's where the game of multimedia and visual media comes to play. Because if you ask me about the visual of Taylor Swift kissing Travis Kelce, I see it. I know it. I know exactly what. Look what we're talking about right now. I'm a huge royal family fundi. People know this about me. On radio, when there was anything to do with the royal family, Sush is the expert because she loves it and she consumes it all the time. When you talk about visual media, Kate Middleton, or Princess Kate and Catherine, has been in the media typically because of the manipulation of a picture and how important photography or how important the visual is. Because now all I'm thinking about is I'm looking at this family picture from Mother's Day and I'm like, where was the Photoshop? So I know visuals are super important and what you present is also important to the media. So from a PR perspective, tell me about visuals and multimedia.
Well, pictures tell a story, right? And it's hard to say this to a radio person because radio people use words to tell a story, right? And you use the word so well that you paint a picture. It's just that everybody's picture is going to be different. And unfortunately, we live in a day and age now where just because you see it and you see the video footage with deep fakes, with video editing, what you see isn't what you get. And so, you have to be so careful that when you put visuals together, when you do that kind of thing, that you're aware of all of that and you're aware that people are looking. I mean, to be very honest, I never noticed that Princess Kate was not wearing her engagement ring in the picture. Literally, I saw a happy family. I really didn't zoom in. I love the royal family. I'm a huge Meghan fan.
Yes.
And I love them all, right? Because, they're not me and I'm glad they live their lives and I don't have to live their lives. But you have to understand that people do look at these things and people are checking. You can use visuals in such a meaningful way, but you have to know what a producer, what an editor is looking for. And you have to know that because when you say to a news producer, come and see this product launch, you've got to know exactly what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah.
What are the cutaways? What are the interviews? Who can I set you up with to interview? What is the key angle? Because I'm inviting 4 other news outlets as well. So I've got to give them all a different angle. Otherwise, they're all going to be talking the same thing on the 8 o'clock.
Yes. You have to entice them to come to your event. There are a million of these events happening at the moment. So what makes you the standout PR company? Entice me. Show me something that I've never seen before and something that no other radio station or no other PR company has come with. I'm like, hey, Anneli in the club, I've got something special. And she's going to go, actually, you and 10 other people are showing me the exact same thing. But if you said, I can give you access to, I can give you exclusivity, I have this person with me, that's where you win. And I think that's really important to keep top of mind all the time. You know what I also found as a radio presenter when we would do our shows, how persistent people are. And it wasn't in a negative way. It's actually very important to have follow-ups. I think persistence is key to building a relationship when it comes to PR and journalism, whether you're speaking to a TV producer. They actually love it because that you're building this long, beautiful longevity of a relationship. Tell me about following up and not being afraid to follow up and being persistent. Without being annoying, of course.
It's such a difficult one, and I get asked the question all the time because where do you draw the line between being persistent and being a stalker? Like if you're working with a radio presenter that's got an evening show, then emailing them at 8 in the morning and expecting a reply by 9 o'clock is a no-go. They're still in bed. You're not going to get them until late in the afternoon. So that's, again, it's knowing them. And then it's also about, with your follow-up, sometimes there is a point where you have to let go. I've got to a point with a lot of people is if you ignore me 3 times in a row, or I've phoned you, I've emailed you, I've messaged you, I've DM'd you, and you're still ignoring me, then it's probably me. My angle is wrong. But you do have to have a never say die attitude, and you have to have a very thick skin.
Yeah.
I must be honest, the older I get, the less thick my skin gets because I don't have time, and I get very annoyed when people don't respond and people don't get back to you, because I'm respecting them by giving them a pitch and giving them something, and they're not respecting me. And sometimes no is also an answer. And if you understand PR and you understand strategic communicators, as a journalist, you know that we have to get back to a client. We've got to say to a client, you're not interested. And it's reciprocal. Both
Yeah.
sides of that relationship need to be proactive about it. And I always just say, treat people how you'd like to be treated. So
Absolutely.
you'd like a response. Because unfortunately, if you ignore someone, then when you want tickets to Beyonce when she's in South Africa, when you want tickets to the red carpet of a movie, and now all of a sudden you're all over me and you want my, now you're contacting me, then I'm going to be inclined to say, guess what, we're busy,
Yeah.
So it's very reciprocal. And I do think journalists and PR people need to understand that and work together with that.
Yeah, I think for me, as my own personal example, I've had really good relationships with people over the years, and it became friendships. And I think that's really important. So it's keeping and fostering relationships, I think, is very important.
Yeah, and that goes across your professional life. You are going to meet people all the time. You're going to have to keep in touch with them. You're going to have to network. That's a key part of public relations, is your personal networking. Your intellectual property is your media contacts. And so building relationships and building that IP is so important. And social capital is one of the biggest forms of capital at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. And then once you know the person, then it's what you know. And you've got to keep that in mind. And so burning bridges, throwing tantrums, getting upset with people isn't going to help you. And I saw it so often in my career. The junior writer for a paper 10 years later was the editor of that paper or the editor of that section. And so if you'd thrown temper tantrums and got ugly or you got personal or not followed them or annoyed them, that would have had a big effect later on.
Absolutely. And people remember stuff. It's out there. Like you said, your footprint is so important, whether it's digital or not. Claire, as we wrap up the session, I think one of the most important things from a brand perspective, when you, as a PR person representing a brand, is to have some sort of research insights, trackability, and measurability. Because if a brand is saying to you, Claire, I would like for you to align whatever I'm selling with this specific personality, they need to see the ROI. They need to see that return on investment. So how important then is trackability and having those measuring results?
Listen, people are paying you money and people are spending money. They want to know what they're getting.
Yeah.
It's easy to say in radio, I spent 30 grand. Here's the 15-second spot. Here it is. You paid for it. In PR, it's a lot harder to show the measurability. And so you've got to put that in your objectives from the very start. This is how many interviews we want. This is the type of interviews. This is where we're going for. And you've got to be able to show your client the value. Yeah. There's a big debate and a huge discussion in terms of ROI. And when it comes to your reputation, the return on investment, if it's positive, is immeasurable. You can't put a value on it. You can't put a value on positive coverage and positive exposure. Some agencies, some PR people put an AVE, an advertising value equivalent, to their campaigns. And there is a growing movement towards you can't pay for what we get. There's just no way you can pay someone that you built a relationship. You could quantify it because you built a relationship with them over 20 years. How do you quantify that? But you've got to be able to show your clients what your objectives were and then how you reached those objectives, how perhaps you pivoted if things changed, how you moved it with the time. But you've got to show value and you've got to show that you achieved something and that you did something.
Yeah. And essentially, just like how you're trying to create and foster a relationship with a presenter, with a media house, with a radio station, you're also trying to do the same for a brand. So it's important to keep everybody happy and to be cognizant and very aware of like, okay, I've got to make sure that the person that's paying me is happy and we're landing properly and we're landing the messaging is correct, what they wanted in the brief has been delivered, as well as finding the right target market, speaking to the right people, so that at the end of the day, everything comes together, everything has landed perfectly, and everything is seamless and everything works. So that's really, really important. Claire, this is where we stop, because you and I can literally chat for hours and hours, and that again is because of the many years we've got to know each other, and I'm so excited to see you as part of Boston Broadcast. We hope we do another session with you very soon. So thank you so much for catching up with us. That was another edition of Study Sesh. The buzzword here is #unlock, because that's exactly what Boston Broadcasts are doing for you. We're unlocking knowledge in snackable ways. We're making this easy for you to understand. But more importantly, we're bringing on unbelievably talented guests like Claire to give you these nuggets that I know that will make the change. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of Study Sesh. I'll see you soon. Peace out.